Hello everybody. It's been a while since I've done a video. I frankly didn't think I would make any more of these, but thanks to the persistence of so many people who have contacted me via monster fish keepers, email, local hobbyists, what have you, I've decided to do at least one more. Who knows if I'll end up doing any more depending on the response to this one, but a lot of people seem to be quite anxious to see an update on what's going on in my Dovii world, if you will. As most of you know, my male Dovii of the previous generation passed away a couple years ago. He was around 13 or so at that time. I believe he was my third or fourth generation. I've been raising Doviis for close to 40 years, and I have had one or a pair, or at one time 3 pairs in this 600-gallon aquarium. One of 2 in my basement that are 600 gallons. Like I said, there's been a Dovii in this tank, or more than one Dovii, for quite some time. Can't say 40 years because this tank's about 25 years old, I think. So a quarter of a century there's been a Dovii in this one. Prior to that, they had been living in smaller tanks. Anyway, this is one of the last 2 of my remaining Dovii. I've got 2 males left. These are the last 2 spawns of my big male, again, who passed away a couple years ago. At the time he passed away, if I hadn't already mentioned it, he was around 27 years old. The other one is in the tank right across from me, which I will show you him in a while. But this is the Dovii that's living solitarily. He is incredibly aggressive, although he is, I wouldn't say shy, but he's a lot shyer than my last big male, who was incredibly aggressive and very, very receptive to people, responsive. If I put my hand near the water, near the tank, he'd come attacking, as you probably have seen from old videos I've done. This one has not gotten that way yet. He is approximately 2 years old, and or 2.5 years old, because again, the male died a couple years ago, and I think his last spawning was 6 months prior to that. So this fish is a little older than that, because this one was the second to the last spawning. The male I have in the other tank was the last spawning. So this guy's probably 2 3/4 years old. You know, he's probably in the neighborhood of 18 to 20 inches at this time. I'm not real good at estimating the size of these guys, but he's definitely in that range. My old male could barely fit into that cave that the new one is kind of heading towards, so I was hoping he'd go in there for a sort of a comparison's sake, if you want to look at one of the old videos to compare, but it doesn't look like he's going to cooperate at this point. Anyway, as I mentioned in the past, I have cut down on the number of tanks I'm keeping. I've sold off a couple of the smaller ones, being the 180 and a 135 upstairs in my what used to be my son's room. As I've gotten a little older and retired from work, I'm trying to do more traveling, and my son moved to New York, so I'm visiting him, or hope to visit him anyway, back east as time goes by. So it's kind of a requirement to start cutting down on some of the fish. Anyway, this is the fish everyone seemed to want to watch, so I'm kind of spending a lot of time on the Dovii. He's got incredible canines, which I don't know if he doesn't come close enough, you might not be able to see, but this Dovii does not smash the glass or the plexiglass like the old male used to. So my old male never had a chance to grow his teeth out much because he was constantly breaking them, attacking me with on the plexiglass. whereas this male so far has not done that. Of course, again, he's only 2.5, 2 3/4 years old, so as time goes by and he gets even bigger and more dominant, that may change. Anyway, so there he is. And now we're going to shift over to the other one in the other tank, because I think that's kind of an interesting story. As we go by, you'll see a small 40, 50-gallon tank that I've got a lot of Peruvian green terror fry right there. They just hatched in a 270 in the other room, and I have pulled out, oh, I don't know, a few hundred, I suppose, of the fry, and left about half with the mother. And hopefully we'll get these raised and growing. We'll see. The tank right here is typically my Amphilophus tank. As you can see, a nice little red devil swimming by, and in the background, a big male chancho who is currently got a spawn going in the corner of this tank. See if I can stand up and you guys can see it. And there's the male, and right there you can see the female, and she's guarding fry, which it's so far away you may not be able to see the fry, but there is the pair. This is another 600-gallon tank, and the reason I'm showing you this tank in the Dovii video is because I have done something which I didn't think I could do, but it has happened. And over here, under this little sponge filter, is my last male Dovii. Now I'm sure he'll come out somewhere else later, but that's where he's hanging out right now. He is about 2.5 years old. He's got a little more color than the male you were seeing in the other tank, but he's not quite as large yet, although he is getting there pretty quick. So I'm going to sit back down and maybe he'll come swimming out. Again, this is the pair of chanchos that are raising fry, which you may or may not be able to see. This chancho's a pretty incredible beast of a fellow too. Maybe we'll talk about him another time. Anyway, as I have always told people in the past on my Dovii videos, I think Doviis are best kept as solitary fish or as pairs. And I did not think I'd see the day where I could raise or keep a Dovii in a tank full of Amphilophus. But the proof's in the pudding, and I suspect the reason that this has worked out is because he wasn't meant to be in this tank to begin with, and here he comes now. We may see him. He's a very colorful Dovii. Try to get over this log. You guys can see him a little better. He's got really good colors. Him and the male chancho sort of fight back and forth without fighting, but they are both attempting to be dominant in this tank. I suspect that at some point this male Dovii will end up as the dominant fish. Right now he's sort of tied with this chancho, who's a much thicker fish than him. The Dovii is, this one is probably, I don't know, 17, 18 inches, something like that. And he is more colorful than his sibling on the other side. Again, this is the last male from my previous male. It was the very last spawning, so he's about 2.5 years old, where the other one's maybe 2 3/4. And there you get a good shot of him right there. But like I said, this guy is an accident. And the reason he's an accident is because when the last time that these Doviis had spawned, I also had spawning red devils in this tank. And a friend of mine, Calvin, was helping me net fry. And, you know, we were going from one tank to the other and netting fry and getting them to a fish store and what have you. And apparently, when Calvin had dipped his net into the Dovii tank and put all the fry into a bucket, one of the little fry, they weren't that big at the time, maybe an inch, half inch, must have still been lodged in the net. And then when he was done with the catching Doviis, he went into this tank with the same net to catch red devil fry. Apparently there was a little Dovii that took off in this tank and escaped. And then, of course, Calvin and I caught the red devils from this tank, and we took all the fish to the store, and that was the end of it. Well, I had no idea that there was a Dovii in this tank. And as fate would have it, one day I was sitting here watching fish, and this little blue streak shoots by, and I'm like, what the hell was that? And of course, it turned out, I thought, was that a Dovii? It couldn't have been. And I thought, well, maybe I was seeing something. You know, I'm getting older, my eyes aren't so great. And I just thought it was my imagination, or just, I didn't know what it was. Anyway, a few days later, sure enough, I saw him again, and this time it was definitely a Dovii. And I just left him in because it's a 600-gallon tank, and he was about a 1-inch fish, so there wasn't much way I was going to catch him. And he has went from a 1-inch fish in this Amphilophus tank full of probably 20 or so red devils, chanchos, at one time arrows, and he has survived all that, and not only survived but thrived. So I'm guessing the reason that this has worked is because he came into this thing as a 1.5-inch fry, and he had to, you know, hide to survive. And he was used to these fish being bigger, and you know, he was not able to establish dominance since he was so little. So for whatever reason, it's worked out pretty well, and I'm going to leave him in here until he causes trouble. If he ever does cause any trouble, he will end up in my 1,000-gallon tank in the garage as punishment. So that's the story of that guy. I think it's interesting in one aspect that in a way it proves one of the, or I guess it doesn't prove, but it is an example of one of the ways that cichlids could have established themselves in Central America. As most of you probably know, cichlids were originally, the American cichlids anyway, originally were established in South America. And there's been lots of speculation as to how they evolved and made it to Central America and, of course, Texas as well. Everything from land bridges to the continental shift and continental drift to you know, a variety of things. One of the theories has always been that, we're going to go back to the other Dovii now, I think you've seen this guy enough, has been, or as I shift here, has been that it's possible that birds, predatory birds or nesting birds, who were in South America feeding on cichlids, could have gotten some of the eggs when they were, you know, foraging for cichlids and hunting and what have you, had some of the eggs attached to their feathers and what have you, and as they migrated to Central America, it's possible that the eggs were dropped in lakes, rivers, etc., and some of them survived and thrived, and that's how we ended up with cichlids in Central America that evolved into the various fish we have now. So my little Dovii story is sort of an example of that. Again, you know, he was in this 600-gallon tank, and he traveled about 6 feet across the room into another tank. Now, he couldn't do that without some help. It wasn't birds this time, but it was the net of my good friend Calvin. And here comes the big male, biggest male I have at the moment, coming forward. Maybe you'll be able to see his canines. I think they are showing there a bit. And with that, guys, I wish you well, and I hope everybody enjoyed this video. Like I said, I may do some more as time permits, and if people seem to still enjoy them. But, you know, I prattled on so much about the fish a few years back that I just didn't think there was much else for me to say. But if people still like them, I guess I can make them here every now and then. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed it. Take care. Talk to you soon.